The ER doors burst open just past 3 a.m. A body on a stretcher riddled with bullets. 20 gunshot wounds, no pulse, the trauma chief shouted. The room froze. Even the monitors seemed to hold their breath. Then a voice cut through the noise. Move. Nurse Lena Cross, the quiet one everyone called the new girl, was already gloving up. She didn't ask for permission. She didn't look scared. Her hands moved with a rhythm that didn't belong to a civilian nurse. Packing, clamping, sealing like muscle memory from a life she never talked about. Call it, the surgeon said. He's gone. But Lena pressed harder, whispering, not while I'm still breathing. And then a single beep. A heartbeat. The impossible. By morning, the story had spread across the hospital. The rookie nurse who saved a Navy SEAL with 20 bullet wounds. But when the FBI showed up to investigate how she did it, what they found changed everything. Before this story begins, hit subscribe and tell us where you're watching from, because tonight's story will test what you really believe about miracles, instincts, and second chances. And if you think we should never judge a book by its cover, comment, snorts, never judge below. The level 1 trauma alarm hit at 7:48 p.m. sharp. Multiple inbound gunshot wounds, unknown count, came the voice over the intercom. The automatic doors at Phoenix Mercy Hospital swung open to the kind of chaos that could make even seasoned doctors freeze. Blood, radio chatter, boots squeaking on linoleum. The air was thick with adrenaline and burnt metal. The smell of combat misplaced in a hospital ward. A gurney slammed through the corridor. Patient 1, male, late 30s, Navy SEAL, 20 bullet wounds, multiple entry points, vitals crashing. The medics were shouting, the doctor already shaking his head. He's not going to make it. But in the middle of the noise stood a woman, calm, still, gloved up before anyone told her to move. Nurse Lena Carter. Her badge still said RN, first-year staff. No one knew her past, and she didn't talk much. She just worked. Precise, fast, unshakable. She was the kind of nurse who carried silence like armor. As the team wheeled the SEAL into Trauma Bay 2, Lena was already there. BP 70/40, shouted the tech. Pulse weak, arrhythmic. Where's the trauma surgeon? He's on his way. But time didn't care. Blood was pouring from the man's side, chest, and leg. He'd been stitched before poorly. Some wounds were old, half-healed, others were fresh. Whoever he was, he'd survived something that didn't want him alive. The attending surgeon burst in, barking orders. We are losing him. Move. Move. He glanced at Lena. Step back, nurse. She didn't move. Her eyes were fixed on the patient, scanning every wound, every entry angle, tracing the pattern in her head. 20 bullets, different calibers, different depths. Some too shallow to kill, some too deep to reach. Her voice was calm. We can't cut yet. You'll trigger a bleed you can't control. The surgeon frowned. Excuse me. She said it again. Sharper this time. He's in hypovolemic shock. Touch that artery and he's gone. The room went quiet for a moment. Too quiet. Then the monitor screamed. Flatline. The surgeon swore. Get the paddles. Lena's hand shot out. Wait. She placed her palm against the patient's sternum. Not for CPR. Not standard. It was something else. A method no civilian nurse should know. 2 fingers pressed between ribs, angled just off the heart, feeling for tension instead of pulse. Quiet, she whispered. Seconds stretched thin, then beep. A flicker of rhythm. Beep. Another. The doctor stared at her. What did you just do? She didn't look up. Bought him a few minutes. Use them. The O door slammed open again. Another gurney. Another gunshot victim. The chaos grew, but Lena didn't stop. Her hands moved like she'd been here before, in a place louder than this, where lives ended faster and choices were permanent. Hours bled into minutes. By 9:30 p.m., the SEAL's pulse was steady, but fading again. The surgeon had left to deal with other patients. Lena was alone beside the man who wasn't supposed to make it. He was pale, jaw clenched, the kind of face that had seen too much and said nothing about it. Don't you dare give up, she murmured. Her fingers brushed a patch of scar tissue near his shoulder. 3 small burns in a triangle, a combat marking. She'd seen that pattern before. Her chest tightened. No one else noticed. His hemoglobin still dropping, called the anesthesiologist. Transfusions not holding. Lena turned, scanning the blood chart. This isn't blood loss, she said suddenly. It's collapse. The coagulants are failing, his blood isn't clotting, and he's been on suppressants. The anesthesiologist blinked. How could you possibly know that? Because I've seen it, she said. Overseas. Her hand went to the crash cart. She pulled 2 vials from the bottom drawer, one unmarked, faded label. What are you doing? Saving him. That's not in protocol. She didn't answer. She drew the mixture into a syringe, flicked it once, and pushed the needle in with steady force. Vital spiking. The monitor screamed. Heart rate stabilizing. Pressures climbing. The anesthesiologist stared at her. What did you just inject? She capped the syringe and said quietly. Something they don't teach in nursing school. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the surgeon burst back into the room, sweat on his forehead. What happened here? Lena looked up. He's stable. The surgeon scanned the vitals, disbelieving. Stable. He was gone 20 minutes ago. Not anymore, she said. The surgeon's voice lowered. You used something off the chart, didn't you? Lena didn't answer, his eyes narrowed. That's a career-ending move, nurse. You don't improvise with a human life. She looked at the man on the table, his chest rising slowly, rhythm returning to his heart. Tell that to him, she said. When the clock hit 1:42 a.m., the ER finally went quiet. 9 patients, 9 critical saves. Every doctor who'd worked the floor that night looked like they'd been through war. And in a way, they had. The chief surgeon stepped into the observation room, flipping through the incident report. 9 lives saved by a rookie. Who is she? He muttered. The night shift nurse shrugged. Just started last month. No family listed, no social media. Keeps to herself. The chief frowned. People like that don't just appear out of nowhere. In the trauma bay, Lena sat beside the SEAL's bed, quietly adjusting his fore, his fingers twitched, eyes half open. Am I dead? He whispered hoarsely. She smiled faintly. Not today. His gaze drifted up to her. You've done this before, she hesitated. Once or twice. He gave a weak chuckle. Then maybe I owe you a drink. Save your strength, she said. We are not done yet. She stayed with him until sunrise, long after her shift had ended. Her scrubs were stained, her gloves gone, her face lit only by the monitor's glow. The hospital was quiet now, the kind of stillness that only comes after chaos. From the hallway, 2 interns watched her silently. One whispered, That's not a nurse. That's a machine. The other shook his head. No, that's something else. You don't learn that kind of control. You survive it. When morning came, the headlines hit before the coffee did. Rookie nurse saves 9 in one night, including decorated Navy SEAL. Reporters gathered outside the hospital doors. Cameras flashed. Inside, the staff pretended not to care, but every whisper had her name in it. Lena walked past them quietly, head down, eyes tired. She didn't smile, didn't wave, just clocked out like nothing happened. The charge nurse called after her. You're trending online, you know that? Lena turned briefly. I'm not the story, she said. Then what is? She looked toward the trauma bay. The fact that he's still breathing. As she stepped into the parking lot, the morning sun broke over the city. The hospital was finally calm, the air clear again. But inside her, something else stirred. A memory she'd buried long ago. The feel of sand, the echo of gunfire, a voice shouting her name across smoke and dust. She closed her eyes and exhaled. Not tonight, she whispered. Behind her, the chief surgeon stood by the glass doors, watching her walk away. He spoke quietly to the security officer beside him. Run a background check on Nurse Lena Carter. Something about her doesn't fit. The officer frowned. Sir, with all due respect, she just saved 9 people. The chief nodded. Exactly. And no one saves 9 people by accident. The door slid shut, sealing the line between rumor and revelation. That night, Lena returned home to her small apartment. No photos on the walls, no family pictures, just medical books, a folded flag on a shelf, and a single dog tag lying on the table. She picked it up, thumb brushing over the engraved name, the same last name as hers, but not her own. For a moment, the calm cracked and her eyes softened. She whispered, I kept the promise. I stayed out. Then she looked at the phone. A missed call from an unknown number. Blocked ID. No voicemail. Just silence. The next morning, Phoenix Mercy Hospital had visitors. Black SUVs, tinted windows, badges on belts. 2 agents stepped through the ER doors, their presence cutting through the usual morning chatter. They walked up to the front desk. "We are here to see Nurse Lena Carter," one of them said, showing his ID. The clerk frowned. "She's off shift. Can I ask what this is about?" The agent's tone was measured, deliberate. "We just want to understand how a first-year nurse saved a Navy SEAL who took 20 bullets and walked out breathing." The clerk blinked. "And what's the problem with that?" The agent gave a small tight smile. "Because we checked our records," he said, lowering his voice. "And there's no such nurse in the system. Not under that name. If you think we should never judge a book by its cover, comment never judge below. Because some people don't just carry secrets, they carry whole wars inside them." The morning after the chaos, Phoenix Mercy Hospital was quiet. Unnervingly quiet. The smell of antiseptic mixed with burnt coffee and relief. But under it all was tension, heavy and sharp. Everyone knew what she'd done. 9 saves, 1 night. They just didn't know how. At 8:03 a.m., 2 black SUVs rolled up to the emergency entrance. The badges said FBI, but their eyes said something else. Curiosity, suspicion, maybe even fear. They weren't here to congratulate anyone. The front desk clerk tried to joke. "You guys lost or something?" The taller agent smiled. "No, just looking for someone who isn't supposed to exist." Down the hall, Lena was restocking supplies, her hands moving on autopilot. The adrenaline from the night before had worn off, leaving only exhaustion. Her body was slow, but her mind wouldn't stop replaying the monitor's flatline turning to a pulse. "Carter," she turned. The charge nurse stood there, awkward, like she was holding bad news. "There are 2 federal agents here to talk to you." Lena froze mid-step. "About what?" The nurse shrugged. "They didn't say, but they know your name." In the break room, the agents waited. Suits too clean for a hospital. Posture too rigid for civilians. The taller one introduced himself. "Agent Donovan. This is Agent Keene. We are with Federal Investigations, Health and Security Division." Lena's expression didn't change. "I didn't know that was a division." "It's not," Keene said flatly. "That's what we tell civilians." They gestured for her to sit. She didn't. Donovan started. "You were lead on 9 trauma cases last night." "I was assisting." She corrected. He opened a file. "The reports say otherwise. You performed multiple non-standard interventions, including one that isn't recognized by civilian medical practice." "Sometimes," she said, "protocol doesn't fit real life." Keene leaned forward. "Tell me, Miss Carter, where'd you learn how to stabilize a 20-bullet wound without a surgeon?" "Experience," she said softly. "From where?" "From doing what had to be done." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Donovan turned a photo toward her. The SEAL she saved unconscious, hooked up to machines. "You know this man." "I met him yesterday." "Did you know he was part of a federal witness program?" Her stomach dropped, but her voice stayed calm. "No." Donovan watched her eyes. "He was targeted for assassination. We think whoever tried to kill him didn't expect him to live. Thanks to you, now they know he did." Lena's pulse spiked. "So, this is about him." Keene smiled faintly. "Oh, it's about both of you." Outside the room, Dr. Mason hovered by the hallway, pretending to review charts. He caught fragments of the conversation. Classified breach military background. When Lena stepped out minutes later, her face was unreadable. "Everything okay?" Mason asked quietly. They had questions about what? "About miracles," she said. He frowned. "They think you did something wrong." She didn't answer. Instead, she looked through the observation glass at the SEAL's room. His vitals were improving. His breathing was steady. "He's still alive," she whispered. "That's all that matters." But it wasn't all that mattered. Not to the Bureau. That night, the agents returned. They'd spoken to administrators, read her file, and found nothing. No school records older than 2013. No verifiable address history before Phoenix. Her resume listed volunteer work in overseas clinics. No details, no dates. Keene slammed the file shut. "She's not a nurse. She's a ghost." Donovan frowned. "Then who trained her?" Keene tapped the table. "Whoever it was, they trained killers, not caregivers." Meanwhile, Lena stood by the SEAL's bedside. He was awake now, pale, weak, but conscious. His voice was hoarse. "You're the one who kept me breathing." "Just did my job," she said. He looked at her closely. "I've seen hands like yours before. Field medics, Marines. You don't move like a nurse." Her jaw tightened. "You should rest." He smiled faintly. "You've seen worse than me, haven't you?" She didn't reply. He shifted painfully. "When you were working on me, you said something. A name." Her eyes snapped to his. "What name?" He tried to remember. "You whispered. Stay with me, Cole. That mean anything to you?" Lena's breath caught. She turned away before he could see her face. "Just rest, soldier," she said quietly. In the FBI field office later that evening, Donovan read through the nurse's employment form again. Something didn't add up. Her ID photo was taken the day she applied. He muttered. Fingerprint record missing. Keene raised a brow. Accident. Donovan shook his head. No, intentionally scrubbed. He opened another file, one he wasn't supposed to have access to. Military personnel, redacted records, Gulf region operations. He typed in the name Lena Carter. Nothing. Then he tried something else. Elsie Walters. One result, Lieutenant Lena Walters, U.S. Navy Medical Corps, declared deceased, 2010. He stared at the screen, his voice low. Keene, she's not just a nurse. She's a ghost with a service record. Back at the hospital, Lena sat alone in the staff locker room, staring at her reflection. The fluorescent lights hummed above her. Her eyes looked tired, older than 30. The name tag on her chest, L. Carter, felt heavier than it should. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small silver locket. Inside was a photo, a man in uniform, smiling, desert wind in his hair. She whispered, "You told me to live a quiet life, to leave it all behind." Her eyes filled, but she didn't let the tears fall. "I tried," she said softly, "but it keeps finding me." By midnight, the agents came back again, this time with orders. The SEAL survival had drawn attention from higher up. Too much attention. They weren't just asking questions anymore. They wanted her detained. But when they entered the hospital, Lena was gone. Her locker empty, her badge on the counter. Dr. Mason caught up with them in the hall. "What's going on? You can't just barge in here." Keene flashed his badge. "National Security." Mason glared. "She saved 9 people and you treat her like a criminal." Donovan hesitated. "Doctor, if you knew who she really was, you'd understand why we can't let her disappear again." 2 miles away, Lena stood on an overpass overlooking the city lights. The traffic hummed below, faint and distant. She gripped the locket tightly in her hand. The world around her was calm, but her thoughts were storming. She'd done everything right. Saved lives, kept her head down, obeyed the promise she made to the man who once saved her. But she could already feel the past circling back. You can't bury who you were. Not when it still bleeds inside you. She pulled out her phone, thumb hovering over a number she hadn't called in years. An unlisted contact that simply read Colonel Hayes. Her hand trembled. Then she locked the screen again. Not yet. Behind her, headlights appeared. A car slowing down, window rolling open. A man's voice called out, "Miss Carter." She turned slowly. It was Agent Donovan. He stepped out calm, cautious. "You're hard to find," he said. "I wasn't hiding." "Good," he replied. "Then you won't mind answering one question." She waited. He held up a photo. An old one. 2 people in marine fatigue smiling under the desert sun. "That's you, isn't it?" Her throat tightened. "Where did you get that?" "From a classified archive that doesn't exist," he said quietly. "And the man beside you? That's your husband?" She didn't move. Didn't speak. "Corporal Matthew Walters," he continued. "Killed in action 2010. Reports say he died pulling another medic out of an IED blast. That medic was you." Her eyes flickered. Pain, guilt, defiance, all fighting for space in one heartbeat. "I'm not her anymore," she said softly. He nodded. "Maybe not, but someone out there knows you are." She looked past him toward the skyline, the faint glow of the hospital still visible in the distance. "If they're coming," she said, voice low, "then I'll be ready this time." That night, a storm rolled in over Phoenix. Lena sat on her apartment floor, map spread out, papers marked with names and numbers she'd kept buried for years. One photo, her husband's, sat in the middle. Underneath it, written in his handwriting, were the words, "Promise me you'll stop fighting." She whispered, "I did until they brought the war back to me." If you believe we should never judge a book by its cover, comment, "Never judge" below. Because sometimes the quietest people in the room are the ones who already gave everything they had to save someone else. The rain came hard that night, pounding against the hospital's glass windows, washing the city clean of sound. But inside it wasn't quiet. 2 floors above the ER, the SEAL, Lieutenant Jason Cross, had woken up. His voice was rough, but his memory was sharp. He remembered the pain, the voices, the defibrillator pads that failed, and then her. The nurse with the steady hands and eyes that looked like she'd seen hell and walked back from it. He asked the staff where she was. Nobody could tell him. By morning, the FBI had sealed her locker, taken her file, and called it evidence. The nurses whispered that she was under investigation. Some said she fled. Some said she was taken. But none of them knew that Nancy, the woman they thought was new to the job, had packed her past the moment she saved him. In a cheap apartment across town, Nancy stared at her old military badge lying on the table. L. Walters. It wasn't her legal name anymore, but it was the one that still felt like home. She ran her thumb over the metal until her reflection blurred. When her husband Matthew died, he made her promise to leave. "Don't become what this war makes of us." He'd said, "You deserve a life where saving people doesn't come with gunfire." She'd promised, and she kept that promise for 12 long years until the night a Navy SEAL with 20 bullet holes showed up under her hands. At the hospital, Agent Donovan stood outside Jason Cross's room. "You were the primary victim," he said. "We need a statement." Jason nodded. "You want my statement?" "She saved me." "That's it." "Mr. Cross," with respect, Donovan pressed. "We are not questioning her skill. We are questioning how she knew what to do." Jason looked him straight in the eye. "You've never been shot, have you, Agent?" Donovan said nothing. When you've got seconds between living and dying, you don't care about manuals. You care about someone who doesn't. Flinch. "That's her." Keen, the second agent, cut in. "You're sure she didn't use unauthorized drugs, off-protocol injections, anything experimental?" Jason almost laughed. "She used something I hadn't felt in years. Instinct." Donovan exchanged a look with Keen. "Instinct doesn't explain reviving a man with no pulse, 20 entry wounds, and a liter of blood loss." Jason's expression darkened. "Then maybe you should stop explaining it and start asking why she knew what was coming before it happened." Across the city, Nancy stood at her kitchen counter. The phone pressed to her ear. "You said I could call if I ever saw them again," she whispered. The voice on the other end was low, growly. "You shouldn't have." "Too late," she said. "They are back." Silence. Then the man exhaled. "FBI." "Yes." "Then it's not them you need to worry about." Before she could ask, the line went dead. Nancy looked out her window. 2 dark SUVs parked across the street. She didn't panic. She just went quiet. She'd been hunted before. Her hand reached automatically for the first aid case under the sink, the same one she'd modified years ago. Inside were trauma gauze, medical syringes, and a folded military patch, the kind you don't wear anymore. Back at the hospital, Donovan's team received a sealed order from Washington. Stop the civilian investigation. It read, "Reassign all material to Federal Defense Command. Subject identified as former asset. Clearance revoked." Keen frowned. "Former asset? What's that supposed to mean?" Donovan didn't answer. He was staring at the screen. Her old file had just been reclassified. When he tried to reopen it, a red banner appeared. Access denied. File under Department of Naval Intelligence. Meanwhile, Jason Cross demanded to see the director himself. "You're going to bury her because she saved me?" He snapped. "That's your angle." Donovan sighed. "Lieutenant, this isn't about gratitude. It's about accountability. Your nurse was once a Marine medic with black-level clearance. She left after an unauthorized mission went south." Jason leaned forward. "You mean the mission where everyone died but her husband? The one you classified to protect your own mistakes?" The agents exchanged a look. "How do you know about that?" Jason smirked. "Because I was there. Different unit. Same sand." Donovan hesitated. "Then you know what happened in Fallujah?" Jason's voice softened. "Yeah, I know what losing someone like that does to you." He looked toward the hospital window, the desert sunlight filtering through his memory. "She's not dangerous. She's broken." And people like you keep trying to make her fix what she left behind. That same night, NY's past found her before the Bureau did. A black van pulled into her street, the kind that didn't belong to any government. She saw it coming through the blinds and didn't wait for it to stop. She grabbed her coat, her phone, and the locket. She still wore Matthew's dog tag inside. Downstairs. She slipped into the alley, rain pounding on concrete. The van door slid open. 2 men stepped out. Not agents, not cops, contractors. Clean-cut, silent. One of them called out, "Come with us. You're being relocated." She almost smiled. That's what they said last time. The first man hesitated. That half-second was all she needed. A flash of motion. She threw her flashlight into the puddle near their boots. The bulb shattered, spraying glass and sparks. They flinched. She was already gone. The next morning, Agent Donovan got the call. "She's disappeared," his partner said. "Check hospitals, airports, border lists." "Already did." Keane interrupted. "She's not running." "What makes you say that?" "Because she left something behind." On the table in her apartment was a single photo. Matthew smiling in his desert fatigues. A note scrolled across the bottom. "He saved me once. I won't let his death mean nothing." At noon, Jason Cross checked himself out of the hospital against orders. He walked straight into Donovan's office, one arm still in a sling. "She's gone, isn't she?" Donovan nodded. "Then you're wasting time sitting here. What do you expect us to do, Lieutenant?" Jason leaned across the desk. "You want to find her? Start where the war ended for her. Iraq 2010. Forward Base Falcon." That night, Nancy sat in an old storage hangar on the outskirts of town. The floor was cold, the air full of dust and echoes. She laid out her kit, sterile blades, syringes, adrenaline. But her hands weren't preparing for a patient. They were preparing for them. Footsteps outside. She didn't flinch. The door creaked open. Not a soldier, not an agent. Jason Cross stood there, pale, but standing. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "Neither should you," he replied. "But you're about to do something stupid, and I've already died once. Might as well make it count." She almost laughed. "You have no idea what you're walking into." He stepped closer. "Try me." When the black van finally found her, there were more of them this time. 4 men, armed, precise. Jason ducked behind an overturned stretcher. "You said they weren't government." "They're not," Nancy said, checking her watch. "They're cleanup hired to erase proof." He glanced at her. "Proof of what?" "Of what we were forced to do." The first flashbang hit the door. She closed her eyes, waited for the pulse, then moved. Calm, precise, methodical, not like a civilian at all. Jason watched in disbelief. She wasn't fighting to win. She was fighting to stall. When the smoke cleared, one of the men was down, the others retreating. Jason grabbed her shoulder. "We have to go." She shook her head. "No, they'll keep coming until someone ends this." He stared at her. "Then what's the plan?" She handed him a folded flash drive. Small, battered, military issued. "Get this to Donovan. Tell him it's proof they're still running the field project. The same one that killed my husband." He took it, confused. "What's on it?" "Names," she said, "and a promise I didn't keep." Before he could argue, she pushed him toward the back door. "Go, Nancy. Go." He ran. Minutes later, as FBI sirens echoed in the distance, Donovan arrived at the hangar. The fire was still burning when he stepped inside. The air thick with smoke and silence. They found 2 bodies, the contractors, and a burned name tag near the wall. N. Walters. Jason handed over the drive. "She said you'd understand." Donovan looked at it, then back at him. "Where is she?" Jason's eyes filled with something between grief and pride. "Gone, but not dead. She's too stubborn for that." Weeks later, Phoenix Mercy Hospital received an anonymous package. Inside was a folded uniform sleeve, Marine patch intact, and a note written in neat, steady handwriting. "Tell the ones who survived that I finally kept my promise." Dr. Mason framed it and hung it in the ER hallway. No one said anything, but everyone who passed it paused just for a moment as if they could still feel the quiet strength of the woman who'd once worked there. If you believe we should never judge a book by its cover, comment, "Never judge" below. 3 months passed. The city learned to sleep again. Sirens folding back into the background hum. The hospital windows replaced. The scorched drywall repainted. St. Matthew's ER moved like it always had, bleeding minutes into hours, hours into the nameless tide of crises that never asked permission. They framed a mystery on the south hallway. A marine green sleeve under glass, patch intact, no plaque. People stopped in front of it without knowing why. Some felt steadier after, some didn't. Agent Donovan didn't sleep much. The flash drive lived in a safe behind his desk. 5 terabytes of dates, burner accounts, medical procurement orders routed through shell non-profits, and a phrase stamped over and over like a bruise. Field Stabilization Group, FSG. Every thread led to dust. Every name looped back to no one. The only direct witness, Nancy, had vanished with the quiet efficiency of someone who'd erased herself before. Twice he drafted a report that could end his career. Twice he deleted it. Truth and survival were bad roommates. Jason Cross did his rehab with the furious patience of a man who refused to negotiate with pain. 20 entry wounds, some through and through, some stubborn as shrapnel. The physical therapist said his range would never be what it was. Jason said nothing and lifted anyway. On his last day of a nascent PT, he paused under the marine sleeve. He pressed 2 fingers to the glass the way some men touch scripture and whispered, "Still breathing." That night, Donovan's phone buzzed with an encrypted text from an unknown number. "You're watching the wrong doors." A location ping followed. An old riverside warehouse zoned as a medical donation depot. Donovan grabbed his coat. Keane jogged to catch up, breath fogging in the November air. "We have a warrant," he asked. "We have a floodlight," Donovan said and drove. The warehouse smelled like ammonia and printer ink. Pallets of disaster relief kits sat shrink-wrapped and innocent. Then Keane found the back room. Steel shelves of sealed ampules, unlabeled syringes, and 2 portable monitors whose firmware screens flashed a Navy diagnostic console that shouldn't exist outside a black site. Donovan photographed everything. As he crouched behind a crate to catch a barcode, a shadow moved 2 aisles over. Soft tread, deliberate. He drew his weapon. FBI, a voice came from the dark, low, steady, impossible not to recognize. Then don't shoot. Agent Nancy stepped into the aisle with empty hands raised, black windbreaker, hair braided tight, face drawn thin from 3 months of leaving no footprints. Donovan felt a surge of something like anger hitch on relief. "You ghosted us." "I had to get here first," she said, nodding at the crates. "These are the veins. Your drive was the heart. Together, the body bleeds out." Keane circled wide, eyes still hard. "You led them to a hospital. You turned a trauma wing into a war zone." Nancy took the hit without flinching. "They followed me because they thought I'd run. I didn't. I drew them away from the ward by starting the fire where I could control the exits. 2 contractors died because they accepted a paycheck to erase civilians. I won't apologize for choosing the patients." "Control the exits?" Donovan repeated almost to himself. "You chose the ground." "I always do," she said softly. "It's how people live." They worked until dawn, cataloging the warehouse with a precision that would survive a dozen committees. Nancy moved with muscle memory. Scan, bag, seal, log. Like field triage, but for evidence. At sunrise, she handed Donovan a small battered notebook, edges, snorts, sweat warped, pages written in a compact, relentless hand. Names of medics and nurses they tried to recruit. Some said no, some didn't get the chance. "Where were you going after this?" he asked. She looked past him to the river lighting up orange. Nowhere for once. A police siren pealed far off. Keane checked his watch. "We need you on record today." Nancy rolled her shoulders like she was resetting a dislocated memory. "You'll get your record." They met in a bland federal conference room with cheerful art no one looked at. A court reporter sat down her little mechanical coffin of a stenograph. A cup of coffee steamed near a plate of cookies no one touched. Donovan clicked the recorder. "For the record, please state your name." "Nancy Walters," she said, then added, "Formerly Lance Corporal Nancy Raines, Fleet Marine Force Corpsman attached to Special Operations Medical Support." She told it without theater. That was the worst part. How FSG had begun as a battlefield stopgap. Stabilize mortally wounded targets long enough to extract life-saving intel for the men still pinned down. How mission creep is never a creep. It's a pivot. Save them, then squeeze them, then decide who's worth saving at all. The night her husband, Sergeant Matthew Raines, carried her out of a killbox and took the round meant for her. His last breath asking her to leave the work that was unmaking her. Promise me you'll live where gunshots can't find you. I promised, she said. But the problem with promises is they don't understand emergencies. Donovan listened, sick and hungry for a different end. So you disappeared. New license, new state, new name, and then a man with 20 bullet holes landed under my hands, and there wasn't anyone else in the room who could choose fast enough. She described that night in the ER with the ordinary words of procedure. Airway, bleed, clamp, balance, dose, like reciting a catechism learned under mortar fire. I didn't break protocol to be a hero. I broke it because he was dying. At the end, the room held the kind of silence that only arrives after someone has said something truer than the law is comfortable holding. Keane cleared his throat. If we go public, you will be crucified by half the people who think rules are the only way to prevent chaos. NY's mouth twitched. And saved by the half who've watched someone die waiting for permission. Donovan turned off the recorder. We won't let them eat you. You can't stop a machine by standing in front of its gears, she said. You stop it by pulling the pin it's hiding. She tapped the notebook. Here are the pins. The hearing came faster than anyone expected. Not a grand televised spectacle, just a closed-door oversight session with staffers who smelled like printer toner and senior members who had learned how to look grave on command. Nancy wore a black suit that fit like it had belonged to another woman. The marine sleeve patch stayed in the hospital. She wore Matthew's dog tag under her blouse instead. Cool metal against the pulse she could never stop counting. Jason insisted on attending as a witness. He walked with a barely visible hitch, jaw clean, eyes conversationally calm, in the way of men who had learned their calm at altitude. When the chair recognized him, he said only, "All I know is a nurse who didn't ask me how many medals I had treated me like I mattered. If that breaks your rules, fix your rules." A colonel in dress blues tried to reframe. Field stabilization saved lives in theater. Nancy didn't raise her voice. Field stabilization taught medics the arithmetic of acceptable dying. We are not accountants. It was not one of those cinematic moments where the room erupts. It was something smaller that meant more. 2 aides stopped typing. A counsel stopped whispering. Someone old enough to have grandchildren looked down, not up. The subpoenas followed. Not enough. Not perfect, but real. A procurement pipeline froze. A contractor lost a contract. A program whose acronym no one could pronounce without looking at the paper went dark. Dark like a light turned off or dark like something that moved deeper underground. No one could be sure. Progress and uncertainty are twins. That night, Nancy went home to an apartment that felt less like a safe house and more like a room no longer needed for hiding. She made tea. She didn't drink it. At 2:17 a.m., someone buzzed her intercom twice. Short. The way corpsmen used to signal friendly through a wall. Her heart sprinted, then slowed. She pressed the button. Who is it? Silence, then a voice she hadn't let herself hope for. Didn't have anywhere else to go. She opened the door. Jason stood in the hallway with a small box in his hand. No swagger, no uniform, just a man who had run out of rehearsed lines. He set the box on her table and stepped back like it was explosives. Found it when I finally got my personal effects back, he said. She lifted the lid. Inside lay a gold ring blackened at one edge, a photograph of a couple in desert light, and a folded scrap of laminated map with 3 coordinates circled in red. She touched the ring like it might remember skin. Where did you evidence locker? He said, marked non-case personal return upon release. I think Matthew meant you to have it. Grief isn't a wave. It's weather. It rolls through years with its own seasons, and when the rain starts, you recognize it by the smell before the first drop hits. Nancy closed her eyes and let it rain. She didn't apologize. Jason didn't try to stop it. Eventually, she dragged a sleeve across her face and laughed once the way people do when a hurt has finally crested. He would hate that I cried in front of someone, she said. Then he'll have to write a complaint, Jason replied. They sat at the small table until dawn, discussing things that had breath. Coffee, how to sleep without nightmares. The way a hospital hum can sound like safety some nights and captivity on others. Jason slid a folded envelope across the table. Reinstatement offer, he said. Not to FSG, to St. Matthew's. The board wants you back. We all do. I broke policy, she said out of habit. You saved 9, he said out of conviction. Pick which math you want to live with. She didn't answer. Then some decisions require mourning. Morning brought a call from Donovan. You should see this, he said. Lobby of the hospital. The south hallway was crowded. Nurses in fresh scrubs. A janitor still in his night shift vest. A receptionist holding a phone she forgot to record with. The marine sleeve frame had changed. The glass now held three things. The sleeve, Matthew's ring, cleaned, gleaming, mounted on a small hook, and a printed card with black serif letters. For those who choose life before paperwork for the promises we keep. St. Matthew's Emergency Department. No speeches. Someone started a slow clap the way someone always does. But it never quite took. It gentled into that soft murmur of approval you can feel. Not here. Nancy stood a step back, too close to leave, too far to be the center. Jason leaned in just enough